Well, we both were part of a group called the Women's Pentagon Action in New York City. And they did actions 2 different years, not sure if it's 80 years, in surrounding the Pentagon. And I did the second one of those. But this was, Peace Camp was 1983, right? So we would meet regularly, this Women's Pentagon Action Group, which was pretty big, and try to decide what we wanted to do about the Peace Camp, what part we wanted to play in that. And that's how we first heard about it. And we decided, finally, after a lot of controversy, that we wanted to sponsor a walk.
A feminist
walk from Seneca Falls to the Peace Camp, which was about 15 miles, I think.
In honor of the women in our past, our foremothers, and for me, being Jewish, in honor of Jewish lesbians, it was the unknown Jewish lesbians who had died in the camps. And so Quinn, you had once made an apron. I don't know where we had this apron. Maybe.
Well, everybody had these.
Yeah,
everybody
we
had
made
these
them. We were down at the War Resisters League, and Quinn and I were the planners of this feminist march. And it was your idea because you had done an apron. Maybe when you did your walks, you wore those peace thing aprons. Anyway, we made a whole stack of bibs. They're like white cotton bibs. You put your head over and you're right on your bib. And we made a whole stack of it. You made a whole stack and I made a whole stack. And all mine were about Jewish lesbians and all yours is I don't know what. And we gave them out to women.
See, I don't remember it that way. But
and Laura, who was not Jewish, who was a photographer, when we got up there, she was also there, and she took some wonderful pictures, and I have some fabulous pictures, which I didn't know all about to do. And Laura wore one of the Jewish lesbian aprons, bibs, I guess they're called. So we were there doing our aprons, our bibs, writing on our stuff. And yours was in memory of your grandmother or something.
Okay, well, it's a little bit different the way I remember it, which may or may not be right. But first off, I don't think we were the only planners of the walk.
No.
We might have had the idea.
We had the idea.
But it was planned by a whole lot of women.
Yes.
And what we planned was to have, and this is what happened, there was some wonderful artists in the group, and I can't say a name, but big poster-like things to be held up really high with pictures of well-known feminists on them, and then some banners with names and dates of feminists that were well-known, and a puppet that was green and gold and wild-looking woman held way up high, which is one of the things the Pentagon Action had was puppets, women that knew. And again, I don't know who did it, but it was really made the march powerful. But the way I remember it is that every woman that participated had a chance to make her own. We made the bibs, but then women wrote on that something personal to them. So these were kind of famous feminists, and then on our bibs we had.
Yeah. That may be, but I remember, yes, some women wrote on their bibs, but I remember doing a stack of bibs and giving them out to different women. But you and I arrived there, nonetheless, differently, because you walked. I met you up there.
Yeah, no, that was the other walk. But in terms of the bibs, and I know yours was Jewish lesbians, and maybe it sounds like you made a bunch of those for other Jewish women too.
No, for everybody.
No.
Well, right. Anybody who wanted them could have
anybody who wanted, but the ideal was people should write on that something personal to them. So I think a lot of different things got written. I wrote, my grandmother was, my great-grandfather refused to fight in the Confederate Army, and he was going to be executed for that, and he escaped, and my great-grandmother was left on the farm, and ultimately she just cracked, partly from that experience. was 44 years in a mental hospital. So I said, victim of persecution of pacifists. But there were a whole range of other kinds of things on the bibs.
Right. The work we did, we were in New York, so we worked, planned, and initiated whatever actions there were in New York. But it wasn't meant just for New York City. It was meant for when we got up to Seneca. And it was meant for New York women. And it was meant for any other women. It wasn't like a restricted thing. Anyone who wanted to join with us, anyone who wanted to wear a bib, anyone who wanted to do anything. I must have given out some of these bibs on the bus or something, because I took the bus with this photographer who I knew, not well, but, was a friend. So maybe that's how she got one of my bibs that I did a stack of them. Because somehow or other, there seemed not to be too many Jews, which is like really weird. You think New York City, a whole lot of, but there was not. And in fact, there was some remnants of anti-Semitism as it happens.
Before we even got there, I had driven up there with somebody.
Regal?
It was a young woman named Barbara, I think was her name. And we looked around and we talked to people. And the thing I remember the most is that there was a Catholic organization that was very interested, very helpful. They actually found us places, found where we could start out, found where we could camp that night before. You got there the night before, didn't you? And remember you had a tent? And we had a tent in Seneca Falls that night. But, that Catholic, I think it was around that Catholic church maybe that we put our tents, and they helped us, made breakfast for us. But I got there, I was attending this Women's Pentagon action, and this was my first time I'd done this, but I had for a long time, I've been wandering around taking the bus a lot. I just was tired of taking a bus. I remember thinking, you ride in a bus and you look out and it's like a lot of picture postcards. You don't really see it. And I wanted to walk, so I announced to the women in the Women's Pentagon Action, I decided, okay, I'm going to walk up there.
Right.
It seemed like the oddest thing in the world,
Right.
and everybody seemed to think it was. But by that time, my friend Blue London had moved to live with Barbara Deming down in the Sugarloaf. And she'd been listening to Barbara tell stories about doing peace walks. And so Blue decided she was going to come and join me. And I had thought of it just because I wanted to walk, but she wanted to make it a peace walk. And so that's what we did from New York City up to Seneca Falls. And that was and we did bibs for that too.
Right. But I thought wasn't Rio with you?
Well, different women joined us off and on. And do you want to hear about that part? Okay, so, Blue decided to join me, and then it started seeming a little less odd. So we took off up the Washington Bridge, up the long path. Is that the Hudson Valley we're talking about? I'm a little vague about it. But anyway, we walked, and different women joined us on the walk. All the way there.
And I couldn't do it because I sold my soul to the devil and was working for the telephone company. And I had 1 week vacation. So I had 1 week, and had they known that I was involved in this protest, or if I were in jail, if you work for a telephone company, you weren't allowed to be in jail. You weren't also allowed to be Jewish. I was the only Jew. I would work with all men. No Jews except the drug-addled dickhead. But anyway, so I had a very heavy time constraint, which I have to tell you made me very hysterical, because it was my survival, my job, So I was really nervous not to get back on time. That's why I spent hardly any time at the peace camp. Just went up and then I left the same day because I had no more time left. But anyway, that's why I couldn't join them, because Blue was also a very good friend of mine, and of course Quinn and I are like very close, like like I don't know what.
It's like this old couple that doesn't remember things the same. So, I remember this aspect of it, that Blue and I both were obsessed with these two different women. We were so irritated. we were so angry at them. And I remember thinking, oh my God, what's the matter? We're going to a peace camp. And I am full of rage. And I look back on that, and it reminds me of how my consciousness in terms of internal work that I needed to do was not so good. But there was also this wonderful thing we were going to. And we got there, and on the way there were women coming, had ridden bicycles, a group from many, many miles away. There was a group from Boston, a group of Buddhist women. There was a group from North Carolina, a whole lot of them had come, and it was like, oh, walking is really, isn't this interesting? This is really fun. And the last part of it, we walk along this fence, and June Song, who's a Buddhist monk that you probably heard about, was there. And she was beating on the Buddhist drum. And by that time, Barbara Deming had joined us, and Rhea, and a lot of other women. So we were a pretty big group by the time we walked into the Seneca Falls. And Barbara suggested that we walk in silence that last bit. And so we're walking, and the Buddhist drum is beating, and we're completely quiet, except there's helicopters and planes flying over us, and we're walking along this military fence. And it was an absolute peak experience of my life. We came into the camp, and all these women were there cheering and welcoming us, and I felt that irritation I was feeling at that woman just it was a wonderful experience. And then I think I can't remember how I got up to Seneca Falls, but then the next day was our walk to Seneca Falls. I mean, from Seneca Falls to the Peace Camp,
Right.
which we thought would take about a day.
Right. So we start off on our walk, and the walk is joyous, and there being the drums, and women are singing, and everyone's talking, and it's just wonderful. And we're walking and walking and walking, and I don't know who, maybe you remember who it is, but we hear that there's trouble ahead. That's what we hear. There's trouble ahead, and be really careful. The townspeople are in an uproar, and there were a lot of very working class guys, maybe guys whose livelihood depended upon that industry, nuclear stuff, factory guys, very working class guys.
Mostly veterans is what we heard, yeah.
Well, I don't.
It's a veterans group.
It was a veterans group. There were women there. There were old women. There were young women and
Children.
And we are walking, and we walk and walk and walk. Trouble ahead, be careful. Remember, be careful, be careful. And the women are still wearing the bibs, and we're walking, and we have no idea of what trouble ahead means. And when we walk, and we are surrounded almost by this angry, rageful crowd screaming at us, and some of the men had guns and were pointing at us.
One man had gun.
I remember more guns, but I remember more
They had it, but
I remember more than one gun. And I remember somebody had an American flag and was not holding it up like that, but like that.
they
And
were jabbing us with the guns.
and
With the flags. Yeah.
and screaming all these terrible things, Let's nuke the lesbies, Jews from New York, let's see blood and blood, because we're from New York and only Jews live in New York, like that.
Kill the commies.
That's right.
Anti-commies.
Nuke them till they glow. And there was a big sign, remember, nuke them till they glow, because we were anti-nuclear.
Nuke them till they glow and shoot them in the dark.
Yeah.
Yep, that
Right.
was.
And they were screaming at us, screaming, and we were afraid for our lives. And it may have been Barbara, maybe you, I can't remember who it was, and I don't remember what happened also, how the women dispersed. We were afraid for our lives. And again, Barbara, you suggested, sit down, try to calm the violence, because it was violent. So I don't know, we were part of the march, so we couldn't see the end and we couldn't see the front really, because we were sort of in the middle, I guess, right? Aren't we?
Well, I think it was about 125,
Yeah,
130,
no,
something
yeah.
like that, yeah.
Okay.
Women from the age of a baby in a baby buggy to, I remember Sonia Johnson was there, her mother was there, and she was in her 80s. I mean, this whole range
Right.
of women,
Right.
and so colorful.
Yeah.
I
We
mean,
were
it was one of the
beautiful.
most beautiful marches I've ever seen.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Very varied. It was just wonderful.
And entirely legal. We made all the arrangements.
And not all of us sat down to do civil disobedience. I don't.
In a way, it wasn't civil disobedience because we
Right.
sat down because
We were
they
afraid.
were violating
Yeah.
our constitutional right to walk.
So they're screaming at us and poking at us, and I remember more than one gun. That's how I remember it. Maybe you may be right, but I remember like 250
Felt like it
guns.
was this whole army attacking us.
And as they're screaming, "Kill the Jews," Jews from New York, and then, as I said before, then I took off my bib because I was afraid that I would be shot. That's how I felt, that I was going to be shot. And so I don't know if 125 women sat down. Maybe they did, maybe they didn't. I think that they did not.
No,
Right?
Yeah.
And there's Barbara. This I'll never forget. There's Barbara standing, holding these wilted, she's tall and slender, and she's holding these, and I thought, Jesus, I can't believe what I'm seeing. They're screaming these fucking crazy, angry, and she's standing there, peace, holding this wilted bunch of flowers that she had picked on the roadside.
She, along the way, was urging people to pick flowers
Yeah.
and give them to people along
Yeah.
the way.
Yeah.
That's what she was doing.
Right. But I remember,
Yeah,
Statue
that's
of
a
Liberty,
picture of her, yeah.
just holding them and talking and then trying to calm everybody down. And so to try to move this along a little bit, they called the police. And I don't know who called the police, I guess. And we're sitting there. Oh no, before the police came, we started to sing. Were we the ones who started first to sing "God Bless America"? Well, I don't know who started. They started, or I can't. Maybe it was they who sang. I bet it was they. I don't think I sang "God Bless America." Anyway, I think they started to sing "God Bless America," and then we sang "God Bless America." It might have been we who started first, but I don't know. And then we're both singing "God Bless America," and maybe it got calmed down a little bit. I don't know, and I think that it maybe calmed down a little bit, and then they must have called the police, and it was the state troopers who came. And see if you remember it this way. You know how they have these military vehicles and the back of the truck sort of goes down? And
Yeah.
right? Goes down. And they are wearing these stormtrooper helmets and
Yeah.
guns.
I remember that. Yeah.
Guns and God, it's like Nazis, German soldiers, and they go out, they don't walk out. You know how they go? They go. And we're sitting, and they're screaming to take us, and that's what they do. Except one guy with a gun. Do you remember this? The one guy who has a gun and is pointing it at us. One of the stormtroopers. I don't know what the hell they are. State troopers. They are not stormtroopers. State troopers. He takes a guy and wrestles the guy to the ground because the guy's pointing the gun at us, and that's all they do. And they probably arrest the guy, and then they start to drag us off, right? So they start to. Is
Well,
there something that goes before
Can we
that?
back up just
Yeah,
a
please.
when they attacked us, then, like you said, some of us sat down to diffuse the violence.
Right.
Because it's hard to believe, and I remember thinking that we were so frightening. All these women, unarmed women, babies, 80-year-old women, everybody in between, but they were afraid. It was very obvious they were afraid of us, and I think when we sat down, I think it did calm them down a little, cut down on that fear they had. Who knows what in their minds was good. We've been handing out flyers that said about lesbians and stuff all the way, we said all our threatening stuff, and so we sat down, some of us sat down, and some of us were walking around trying to just talk to people. I remember Blue and Barbara were both doing that, and I can't remember who else. And so we were sitting there like that in that hot sun for 2.5 hours. And so much went on, I can't even begin to remember all of it. But one of the things was that those of us who were sitting and decided we wanted to stay because we felt we had a right to be there. But then there was a group of women who did not want us to be there. They didn't wanted us to just give it up and go and leave, which was understandable. But so quite a bit of time was going on, and we moved, and here, so we're sitting down, and these women are standing around us, really screeching at us.
Yeah, that's right.
We got to get out of here. Don't make an issue of that. That's not why we're here at the peace camp. That's not what this is about. So, but the way I remember it is gradually we started doing our process.
Right, we started doing CR in the middle of this street that we're sitting there, those of us who elected to stay and not run. We started to do CR, which we did throughout our time that we were jailed.
Well, so there we are talking and also trying to talk out what it is we need to do. And somehow, I can't exactly remember how it got resolved, but it did get resolved. But the thing I remember too about it is that, so here we are, a whole bunch of us sitting down, and by this time we probably are about 50.
That's right.
Because some of them just did leave.
That's right.
And then some of them left, some of us are sitting down, some of us are talking to people, and some women are trying to talk us out of being there.
That's right. Screaming.
Yeah, our women. You know, they're afraid something's going to happen to us, and they're afraid.
And also, it's a very frightening situation, and they've lost their calm. They're not sitting down. They're really yelling at us because they themselves are afraid. We ended up, because we were talking, and as Quinn said, doing our process, we ended up being not so afraid. We were willing, and as soon as I got rid of my Jewish bib, I was much better. I wasn't so afraid I'd be killed, because then I was just one of everybody. You know? So it was a process, and that process we did throughout our time in jail, which include the matrons, which enabled us to get vegetarian food, the process, and it really helped things.
Oh yeah. Well, so what I was going to say about that process, sitting there in the hot sun, and this going on a long time, we're talking, and all of a sudden I looked up and I realized we're doing this process, and we have gotten more peaceful within ourselves, and here are all these guys and these crazy, this crazy mob, they're all standing around kind of mesmerized. What are these women doing? And then I don't remember either who started it, but that thing, I mean, those patriotic songs, I don't necessarily like the words, but I grew up with them. They can get my, tears to my, so maybe say they started singing, and then we started singing, and it was almost like who could sing the loudest, who was the most patriotic.
That's what it was. It was, we are as patriotic as you are. This is how we believe our patriotism should be.
This is a version of, but yet it was a kind of okay thing what's going on.
Yeah,
it was okay. It felt kind of like some connection was being made, and then there was this back and forth, like the sheriff was trying to get us to turn around and take another route, and then we had to talk that out, and we decided no, we didn't want to do that, and then there was one point we thought we could get up and move forward across the bridge. We thought they were calmed down enough.
But we couldn't.
But no, they started up again, and really what happened was the sheriff said we had to leave or we were going to be charged with inciting a riot, and we were afraid if we got up we'd be shot in the back. Yeah, and then there was that fear.
And the sheriff led us to believe that your lives were in danger and this was a dangerous thing to do and you have to not do this.
But basically what I think, and maybe this is naive, but I think if those cops and those state troopers had left us alone, we could have managed to work it out.
I think we
Some
maybe,
way.
I think maybe we could have, maybe we couldn't have. There might have been one or two crazies. I think that guy that they wrestled to the ground was crazy. He was, you know. So the thing is, you don't know who's crazy or who's not, or who could get shot or who couldn't. You don't know. And a crowd like that leads to more violence. I mean, a crowd.
But I think that the way we were handling it was leading to more calm. And I think the police stirred it up. And that's when, you know, and the state troopers came, and then it was all over. That's when they dragged us off.
That was the end. They loved it. Those state troopers, boy. And then the women are shouting, "Be easy with her. She's old. Be easy with her. Take it easy." Boy, they were rough with some of the women.
When the crowd attacked or blocked our path, what they did was block so we couldn't walk across a bridge. And and then we decided to sit down. And so there were a good, probably a good half at least, just didn't want to do that. So they walked to the side. They were probably hanging around to see what would happen, but they didn't want to do this.
Well, we don't really know. We don't really know. Some of them were on the side. Some of them may have decided to go up to Seneca. We don't know how many stood there to see what would happen, stood there to support us, were so afraid that they left. We don't really know.
And one thing we do know, though, is that I don't know a name. All I know is she was a wife of the bank president of the town, was so appalled at what was happening to us that she joined us. She got arrested.
Yeah, she joined us, and when we were locked in jail the first night, she was there.
Well, I couldn't remember how long she stayed.
Not long. She was there, though.
Yeah, she might have been released on her own recognizance.
Yeah, we were willing. We were willing to be arrested because we did not want to leave. I mean, we had come up there to do our march, and that's what we wanted to do. Whoever thought they would hold us for a week?
First, they took us to jail. Yeah, each of us. Some people walked. Some people refused to walk, and they had to drag.
They dragged us.
But they took us to a jail. I guess it was Waterloo, and then that was mostly like they booked us.
Right.
And then they took all of us to, because there were too many of us.
And I remember when they booked us, I was so afraid the telephone company would find out. I wrapped my head with this towel thing, and you had to hold a number, and I thought, made this face so that I would be unrecognizable, just in case. The telephone company is like so militaristic that they would find out. I thought it would be in and out. And I want to say before I forget, because when we were there so long, Bella Abzug sent down, do you remember this? Because this was so outrageous. So Bella Abzug heard about it and sent down an overseer, someone to make sure that terrible things weren't happening to us in our lockup. So.
And the terrible things were not happening to us in our lockup. Some terrible things happened, but they were treating us with kid gloves. They gave us vegetarian food.
Well, not in the beginning. They didn't.
But that's what I'm saying. They realized they had a sensitive situation here, and they
did know. But we were also, when we were sent to the school, we were also patrolled by, military people with dogs.
That was not nice, no.
It wasn't a piece of cake, let me tell you.
No, not at all.
We were patrolled by these kids wearing uniforms with dogs, so it wasn't so, terrific. Well, they took us from jail. They couldn't hold us in jail. So they took us with them.
There were too many of us to stay in jail. It was Interlochen Junior High School in that area, which was kind of interesting. We had stopped there for a lunch break when Blue and Barbara and I were walking, and then a few days later, there we are in jail.
So, and the bed set up, and we were. I was wearing a plaid polyester shirt, and I stank. My armpits. I was dying for a shower. It was.
But it's 5 days we were in there. I remembered it as a week, but
I remember it.
I just read Barbara's thing. She says it was 5 days.
Well, the whole thing, the travel and everything, I had to be back. I had no time.
Yeah, you're.
My week was gone from the traveling and from this thing, so the whole thing was a week. By the time I got back, the next day I had to go to
It
work.
would have been just. I was in a different situation than Rosalie because I was doing this at that time in my life. I was doing temp jobs and wandering around a lot. I had saved up some money for my last job, so it didn't matter to me if they kept us.
Right.
I knew that's probably what would happen. I thought there was a good chance that would happen if we just sat there and didn't leave because the sheriff wanted us to leave. I mean, in a way, I suppose it was civil disobedience in the sense we didn't do what the sheriff said to do.
It was.
So, but some people say it wasn't civil disobedience, and there was. I realized that when I was getting my stuff out from this, several articles from the written by women from the area were sort of critical of us for making a big stink about it instead of just getting out of there. Feeling and critical that we hadn't done enough outreach to local people. Now, I would disagree with that. I understand why they might have thought that, but I would disagree because there were a lot of local people helping us. There were local people at the camp. I remember there was Amish family lived near the camp that brought us bread.
Right.
Some of the women, some of our guards, they were afraid. I remember one of the guards said to me, "Oh boy, I took a knife off that woman." And I said, "Well, most of us carry Swiss Army knives or something when we're camping." But she kind of gradually got more friendly. There was one woman that was wonderful. She brought, and she got to know us, and she defended us, and she told us there were a lot of people in the area that were sympathetic with us.
And
she lived on a farm, took food to the camp.
And of course, while we were there, that's what we did all day was talk, did CR, what we were going to do, how we were going to handle it, and it was wonderful how we did it. But what was more wonderful was the women who worked there, the matrons, I guess I would call them, looked at us doing what we do, how we came to decisions about how we were going to handle this. How were we going to handle the fact that we wanted vegetarian food and there was none? What kind of process? So, how it uses CR, talk. So we had all the time in the world, so we talk, like that. I mean, but there were fears, so they were amazed at our process. And some of them became quite friendly with us and were very, very kind to us. We had a very nice relationship. But something happened that sort of changed some of them, but I can't remember what.
Well, I want to say that it was like rural. There was also a rural-urban thing, and I objected to the stereotype that everybody that lives in the country is a bigot. That terrible redneck. I don't like that word because it's very stereotyping of people that work out in the sun. So I think it was a good example of how that's not true.
Right.
There were a lot of people that were really scared and behaving horribly and violently, but there were also a lot of people that were very supportive.
And one of the most wonderful things for us, if you remember, the women from the peace camp came down and surrounded the school every single day, right? Mm-hmm. They made a ring and they sang to us.
I remember Grace Paley out there with her.
Yeah. And they sang to us and they stood there for hours singing to us, and it was.
I remember Barbara's lover, Jay Verlaine, was out there. And some of the violent, angry townspeople were really giving them a hard time. And Barbara was watching out the window, and she started to cry because she was worried about her lover.
We were promised, because we were good, this is how I remember it. Quinn can tell you how she remembers it. I remember it that we were promised, because we hadn't had a shower in so long, so we were promised showers. Now, I'm not quite sure of the sequence of the events, and as I remember it, that we go and we take our showers. Now, what's Sonia Johnson's, right? Sonia Johnson, is that her name? So, the showers are very scary. The showers look like the gas chambers and concentration camps. It freaked me out a little bit, but just a little bit. And I don't know if I said to her, I said, God, these look like concentration camp, where they gas them to death, because it's concrete and just how it looked. And we go back to the barrack room, and you knew Sonia Johnson, and so you're over there. And the next thing I know, Quinn is coming to me and would you remember her name? So it was Sonia Johnson.
Susan, it was her lover, but I can't remember her last name.
It was yes, so it was Sonia Johnson's lover, who happened to be Jewish. And the showers freaked her out so that she was like sobbing, and no one could help her. So Quinn, I don't know, Quinn was there. So Quinn comes to me and says, she's Jewish and she's crying and the showers really freaked her out. Why don't you go and see if you could help? And I go into her bed with her, the little bed, and I remember holding her arms and talking to her and soothing her, and I was able to stop her from crying and stayed with her for a while. I mean, it was not a concentration camp, and we weren't being killed, and I don't know why her memories did that to her. And then, this is how I remember it, and then they counted us every night. They would count us to make sure we didn't escape or run away, and 2 women escaped. And in the middle of the night, they make us get into this cold, we're freezing, this cold, long hallway, and they are screaming at us that 2 women escaped, and they are going to search for these women, and they're going to do vaginal searches. And one of the women screams out, "What? You think you're going to find the women in our vaginas?" and I remember 1 and maybe 2 had put on rubber gloves. And I remember that they took the first woman who was standing there off into a room. Now, what room they took her off into, I have no idea. Maybe it was a shower, and maybe it was, I don't know where they took the first woman. And I don't even know if she was searched or not. But whatever it was that we did in the talking to them, maybe you could fill this in a little bit. We were not vaginally searched. They stopped. I mean, the most ridiculous thing in the world, and we were talking to them all the while. And then I think we were also maybe silent and scared. I mean, I was scared. I mean, I believe they could have done anything they wanted to us, really. I wasn't.
Seemed like we were sitting in that cold hallway in our pajamas for the longest time.
So they kept us there so purposefully. Mad. They did it purposefully because it was freezing and it was damp, it was dank and horrible.
The only place that we have this difference is that I remember that the women, and it's amazing to me that the way I remember it is there was open windows right behind their cots. They just crawled out the window. Went away.
And in retrospect, I wonder why we were.
Why didn't we just follow them?
I don't think it was so easy.
I know.
I think it was high up or something.
Maybe they figured out how to get out.
Yeah, I don't think it was so easy.
But anyway, they counted, when they did their count, they found that they were gone, and they marched us into that cold hallway, and we sat there, and the way I remember it is that they were going to search us, and they were going to take each of us individually into the showers, and that's when Susan freaked out. But you haven't more connected with taking showers. So.
Yeah, and she's seeing the showers because they look like the gas chambers. That's what they look like.
Maybe, possibly, she had seen them when we took showers, and then when she saw, I mean, it was such a scary thing they had. It was scary. It was like they were so irrational and angry. They were raging.
It was very sad.
So we were sitting there, and to think that they were going to take individual women.
And that's what they were threatening to do.
And so anyway, but that did get resolved, but it took a long time. And I remember that one, I don't know, was it the warden or whoever, he said he finally agreed to not do that and let us go back to bed. Right. And I remember him saying, But that's the last kind thing I'm going to do for you.
He would have been in deep trouble if he had done that, and I think he knew it. That's why he didn't. He would have been in deep trouble. The whole thing is fucking illegal anyhow, and how something terrible didn't happen to them is beyond me, you know. I mean, they should have been sued.
Yeah, even for arresting us.
The whole thing, how dare
so
they?
illegal.
But I was so get through the whole thing. I have to tell you that I mean, there was a lot of talk and a lot of it was wonderful, but I had such an undercurrent of worry about my job because when I had this job, I was not young, you know. So and I did it for health benefits and money. So I was all the time worried. Oh, poor Quinn, I probably drove her crazy. Oh my God.
It was a decision, though. I mean, it was all possible for anyone to bail out.
Was it?
Yeah, you could, and a lot of people did that had to leave for work or something. But you didn't want to. You didn't want to.
No, I didn't want to. But I was lucky that I didn't have to decide what I was going to do that Monday or that Sunday before the Monday I had to go back to work. Because, well, I don't know what I would have done. I don't think I would have lost. I didn't have to make that choice. I mean, as it turned out, it was over Sunday and I was back in time to suffer. And so they must have counted us 35 times. They couldn't believe that 2 women were missing. Count again. And I think some of us maybe moved back and forth. They were so nonplussed. How could this happen to them? How could 2 women disappear?
And of course, they were afraid they'd be in trouble with their authorities if they felt we'd left.
Well, they put us at risk in doing what they did, certainly. But I don't know how rational, you know, because all the things that we were feeling, I can speak for myself, a lot of it was tinged with fear. You know, there was fear involved in being vaginally searched, or the threat of being vaginally searched, being cold and smelly, and, you know, I mean, all these things are not wonderful, and I'm always worried about losing my job.
Well, that was a valid worry, and I think that's why a number of women did bail out.
Right.
You know, but I remember we tried really hard to not have it be a coercive situation, so anybody could do what they needed to do depending on the situation. Nobody wanted to feel guilt-tripped into losing their job, for goodness sake.
And we tried very hard not to give power to those who were better known, who maybe were more articulate. We tried to be very equal in our process. We were careful, we said, you know, we would say
did consensus.
Yeah, we said it. And if someone took too much time, and we were very careful. Everyone has to have a chance, everyone has to have a turn. Very feminist, you know. CR is what it was. We respected the process. And really, we had the time. I remember that it was not to be, although Barbara may have written, I was very clear that everyone had to play a part in what was being written, that it shouldn't be left to, let's say, just Lou and Barbara. So that all women had a voice in what was being written, so that it would be as equal as we could. Of course, some women have more skills than others, but everyone took part in what was being written. Everyone had to agree, and it was like the part that I said
This
before.
is 50 women we're talking about.
Right. And it was like the part when they left out, kill the Jews. You know, that's when I said, hey, you know, you're writing all this stuff. What about this? Oh, I'm so sorry, you know, blah, blah, blah. But no one, I mean, you know what. So that was inserted, and everybody was able to have a voice.
We even, when it got to, we're getting ready, because we knew we were going to be in court, trying to decide who would be our spokeswomen, we drew names.
We drew names.
To see who would do that.
No one said, because Blue is very articulate or Barbara is very articulate. No one, we had to draw names. And then, if the women's name, who was drawn, did not want to do it, that was up to her. And so that's how it came. And then there were those women who wanted, and then there were some women who wanted that woman to do it because they thought she would be very articulate, but it all had to be agreed upon. And if your name was chosen and you wanted to do it, you could do it. You could talk. You could, and we were all Jane Does. We had all agreed we would not say her name.
So, and just one other thing, I think the experience was, I mean, we're all afraid, and I think it was probably harder for some women than others. And one of the times I saw, Barbara was known as such a compassionate person, and you know, she wasn't a saint, obviously. Some people thought so, but you know, who's a saint, and who wants to be called a saint? But I saw her compassion in the way there would be some women who were just freaked out or whatever, and they would be by themselves, and their fear was kind of, you know, made you want to not sit next to them. You know, it was like however they were showing it, people would be would draw back from them. And Barbara would just, she, I think, consciously saw those women, and she would go and sit by them. Not forever, you know, just long enough to give them some time. She was very afraid herself, but what I saw in her was that she didn't let other people's fear drive her away. So they started out taking one woman at a time into the judge, and the women would not walk, so they had to drag them. And then some of you people were blocking the door, so then they had to drag you
Right.
away from the door so they could get this one woman dragged in to the court.
But, you know, part of keeping those doors open was that it was hot, it was August, it was very, very hot. They wanted to close all those doors. And like you, it was like, no way are they going to get all of us inside here and blow us away. And I remember holding that door open, leaning against it with my foot as they tried to close. No, you're not going to close this door.
Yeah.
And that they hauled us out. And also, do you remember the blue ribbons? That we tried to get the blue ribbons onto the bus, that everybody inside had ribbons on their arms, on their, and that we did
I don't
all
know
these
that.
opinion
Yeah,
groups,
interesting.
if they wouldn't do the trial the way we thought it was supposed to go, which was to try everybody together, that when they brought the first woman in, every affinity group was going to do something. So some women hissed, and some sang, and some got up and stomped their feet, and we would not let the trial go on. And that
I knew there was a tremendous commotion out there. Yeah, I just loved that. I thought that was a real important part. So then they bring this one at a time, and then they go before the judge, and every one of them says, won't say her name, Jane Doe. My name's Jane Doe, and they would only say, and they told the judge, well, if you give me a court date, I won't return. So finally, this poor old magistrate.
That's right. Gave up,
and he said, okay, we'll try all of you together. And so I guess we walked then, or they didn't have to bring. They didn't. I think we walked at that point.
And the deal was too that they would expunge our records.
No, but after he tried us, he agreed. You know, that's how.
So
then
our spokeswomen spoke.
And somebody read that statement that all of us had helped write. And I remember Eva, was that her name, Eva? She spoke. She was from Austria or something.
Oh, yeah,
She said it
yeah,
reminded
yeah.
her of the Nazis
Yeah,
coming into
yeah,
Austria.
Yeah.
And she's talked about that. It was very moving. And
You can push it.
so then, we drew names, and I think we drew Blue's name. So I think she was one of the spokespeople.
Blue was one. I don't know
I
whether.
can't think who the other one was.
Barbara?
No.
I don't know.
So anyway, but the magistrate finally dismissed
Right.
all the charges, and they gave us our
Pictures
mug
back.
shots and
That's
our
right.
fingerprints, and it was
And they
over.
agreed to. I don't remember when they agreed, but it was part of the deal that they expunge our records.
Yeah.
Whatever deal
Well,
was
it was
worked
once
out.
he decided to dismiss the charges. Right.
It may have been once he decided. Well, I can't remember to
Yeah,
try
I
us all
remember
in mass. I mean, but that was included. It was
I
one of our
actually
demands.
think that the first judge gave up in absolute
That's
and
right.
they had to call in. They finally got a second judge
Oh, yeah?
who came in. Now that's how I remember it.
Oh, I don't know, maybe.
That the first guy, was insistent on trying each woman individually and couldn't get anywhere, and he tried several, and then the cops were like hauling people off and throwing us out the doors and
How much money
They
it
were
cost?
hauling us in, hauling you away from the doors.
What kind of money it cost that municipality to
Right.
feed us an absurd way, and how did this illegal thing happen?
Well, you then got to walk through.
Jubilation.
Oh, God,
I remember
absolutely.
everybody and all you folks were there.
Was
and-
I happy? I knew I wasn't going to be fired.
Yeah.
I was thrilled, because for me it was a very big risk,
Uh-huh.
And then when I got back, I told somebody, and they said to me, "Don't you ever tell anybody. If they find out what you did and what happened to you, you will be fired. The telephone company will not have any of its employees arrested or in jail."
You know now, and I don't do much civil disputings now because they would take my Social Security away.
Oh, well, actually, we went up, then we had some time, because it was a Sunday, I do believe. Am I right? And we went to the camp.
Yeah, we did.
Quinn spent maybe a day more than I, but we
Not
did,
much, yeah.
we did go up to the camp. And I remember sitting in a
Singing.
chair that went back a little bit, God, sitting next to you.
Just
And,
relaxing.
Do you
And-
remember singing? That the whole group from Waterloo, the Waterloo 54, or what was left of them, came. And I remember you were singing, I can hear the song in my head too. Tremble, tremble.
Were you there?
Were you there?
At the bridge in Waterloo,
Yeah.
based on him. Were you there when they crucified my Lord? We were we sang it 50 million times when we were in.
But it was wonderful when we finally got up to, there was such support and such cheering of us, and sitting around, I think we were in groups talking about things, and I was...
And one of the things that I don't remember exactly, but I think we might have started, when we were still in jail, we started going around the circle and telling our life stories, every one of us. And I don't think we got all the way around. So I think after we got to
Seneca maybe
to Seneca that we
maybe
finished.
yeah, that's what I think. Yeah, me too. I think that's what happened.
Yeah.
We love to tell our life stories.
It keeps getting longer and longer too. It's harder to get it.
Yeah.
So in retrospect, as you've thought of it over the years, is there anything you would have done differently personally or as a group?
Yeah, I would like to have sued their asses.
Okay.
I would have liked to have some revenge on them. Yeah.
Well, the one thing I thought about, mostly I thought it was an amazing experience. It was horrible what they did to us, but it was, I think, wonderful what we did for ourselves, how we responded, how we were able, all of us, to work together and make all to agree to the same thing. And my whole, mention this, my memory of that and the 80s is of a time when the women's movement and the peace movement came together. And not just Seneca, but there was so many. There were peace camps, women's peace camps all over the place, and all sorts of wonderful things, and making connections between violence against women and this whole militaristic headset and weapons and, militarized economy. And I'm nostalgic for that because I wish it would happen again. The other thing I thought is, when Blue and I did that walk, it's easier to connect to people, when you're just a few of you and you're one-on-one. We talked to a lot of people, and I never felt threatened. I've done a lot of long-distance walking since then, and you can make a lot of connection with people. There's something kind of threatening about a great big march. And I know that was one of the criticisms people had, and I don't really feel that way, but I think there's a point there. We just walked through this town, 120 odd, 5 of us with our scary flyers and our big banners, and they didn't know who we were, and we were just stomping through there. And I'm not sure that's my favorite thing in the world to do, but I still cherish the memory of that because it really was a beautiful walk.
How
I'm
about-
not saying that's my point of view. I'm saying I know some people felt that way, and I can really
Also,
get it.
yeah.
I can get
Yeah,
why.
well,
they
also, we
make
so,
that
and we
decision.
go to this rural town, and we're considered from New York, and, you know, it is a rural urban thing, and also we're other. You know, we're women, we're lesbians, we're commies, we're Jews, we're all these things that are feared and hated, and a ready target for their anger over their lives. But I think it was wonderful. I wouldn't have changed that. It wouldn't be the same effect, and you would have had a different result if 2 or 3 women walked through that town to Seneca, and then nothing would have happened.
And
So-
also, I think what I was saying earlier, I mean, we did scare people.
Yeah.
Our march scared people, but I would feel that as a criticism more acutely if there hadn't been so many people from the area that were so helpful and were so sympathetic.